Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's team brief. It's just gone 12 o'clock, so it is just in the afternoon. Can't believe it's the 1st of April. I'm not sure exactly where the year is going to, but you're very welcome. I'm joined today by Rachel McCubbin, who's our People Development Operational Lead, and she's going to give us a bit of an update around some of the changes to mandatory training. And then I'm also joined by Rich Mills, who's our Chief Financial Officer, who's going to give us an update on all things to do with finance. I forgot to say I'm Dave Sowen, I'm the Acting Chief Executive. So we'll get to those in a second. I've got lovely Liv in the background running the show, and she'll be posting comments and links into the Q&A. And just to remind you all, it's much more interactive. It helps me if you put questions in the Q&A section. Stops me having to ask Rachel and Rich the tricky questions, but I can actually ask your questions. So I've got a few updates. You can see those on the screen there. The general update around the Community Diagnostic Centre. So we've got an information session which is planned to go ahead on the Thursday, the 17th of April, between 11 and 12 in the Lecture Theatre 1 at Kingsmill Hospital. And that's going to give us some key updates on the latest developments, the construction progress, the various changes that we're trying to do in terms of not just facilitating getting tests completed for our patients, but also some of the new diagnostic pathways, trying to do things differently. Gives us an opportunity to actually rethink and redesign how we provide some of those pathways. And that all links to improving the care that we give to our patients. So great opportunity to learn more about that, and it'd be great to see some of you there. And we've got a link that will go into the chat or the Q&A about how to confirm your attendance if you're going. And then the next update I've got is around our new cardiac CT scanner. So this is again on the Kingsmill site, and that's due to open officially tomorrow. And this is a new scanner that is one of the most sophisticated scanners in the country. It's the first trust in the East Midlands to have this type of scanner installed. It's a GE Apex Elite, improving cardiac CT scans to be completed in a single beat of the heart. So what that means is that in effect the scan is so quick it's done in between the beats, so you don't have to slow the heart down or do anything interventional to the patient. You can just put them in the scanner and allow them to do that. So we've got Charlotte Henshaw, who's the 3 times gold medalist Paralympian, coming to open that. She's a Mansfield ambassador, and she was born here at Kingsmill, and she's going to come and officially unveil our new scanner. And some of you all know, but we name our CT scanners, or we've started to name our CT scanners with the letter C of the alphabet. So this new scanner is going to be called Claudia, and we've got a launch event for that on Wednesday. And of course, just for those of you who are really interested, we name our MRI scanners with the letter M. Don't ask me why we do that, but we do. Anyhow, so that's a very significant development for us, and will improve our ability to perform cardiac scans in a bit of a revolutionary way. The next update I've got for you is less popular. It's about some car parking updates. So car park 15, which is the back of pathology, we did have that closed because it's the site of the new MRI build, and unfortunately that new build was delayed quite significantly, so we reopened it, and that freed up some extra spaces in there which people have been using. But we've got to now actually build the MRI scanner, so we do need to close that car park again. I'm sorry, and that's going to close on Sunday the 6th of April from 2 p.m. To allow those developments to occur. We'll be watching closely to make sure that actually buildings do suddenly appear on that site and some building occurs. Obviously, we're working with our estates team, recognising the impact that this has, the loss of these spaces that it has, and the premium difficulty that we've got with car parking, particularly on Kings Mill, and we'll be releasing some announcements about additional car parking spaces just as soon as we've got them. We also know that Car Park 15 does have a number of blue badge spaces, and we've made some alternative provision in Car Park 10 for that. But we can help anyone who's got mobility problems if they can't find that Car Park 10 spaces. And then a couple of other little updates. So we've got the Excellence Awards in 2025 coming soon. So we're delighted to announce that the Excellence Awards nominations will be opening just next week. And this allows colleagues and members of the public to say thank you and to recognise the outstanding efforts. It's always an amazing evening, and it just recognises the efforts and the work that colleagues do. Fantastic event. So this year's awards will be taking place on Thursday, the 18th of September. Date in the diary, and it's your opportunity to celebrate all the incredible work you've done here at Sherwood. The Excellent Award celebrates individual colleagues, teams and volunteers who go above and beyond in their roles and make a positive impact on our services, our patients, our visitors and colleagues. So the nominations will be open, as I say, from next week, and details of how to nominate and some help for those people who find it a bit daunting to make a nomination will be all in this week's bulletin. We're changing the venue this year, so we've held the awards for a number of years at the John Fretwell Centre, but we're changing it. We're going to hold this year's event at the Mansfield Town Football Club. We've been in negotiations and discussions with the CEO of the Mansfield Town, and we think that will be really helpful to have it in the centre of the town. And hopefully that venue, or we know that venue will be slightly larger, so we'll be able to have even more of you coming to join us to celebrate that. And then the final bit really to say around that is the Excellence Awards are funded through external sponsorship and some of our charity donations, and they don't come out of the trust finances. So, and then just a couple of other ones, a couple of other updates. So I was doing a walk around with Ali Pearson this morning, just to go and talk to people about staff networks. And it was really interesting. A lot of people that we spoke to, we went to the ED department. A lot of people we spoke to in the ED department really weren't aware of the different staff networks we've got. We've obviously got a number that are well publicised, but ones such as the Women in Sherwood or the Veterans Network, perhaps less available or not less available, less familiar to people. It was really good to talk to colleagues around that. Ali and I are going to continue to do a few walk rounds. If you want us to come to your area to come and update you around staff networks, just give you a bit of information in a sort of face-to-face way, we're very happy to do that. And hopefully we'll put Ali's email in the chat to drop her a message around that. And then finally, just before we get into the main aspect, obviously it's year-end finances. We've rather messed up in procurement. We've got the delivery of 25 additional stand-up chairs, surplus to requirements. So if anyone wants one of those chairs, just put your contact in the chat and we'll get that to you. Okay, let's move ourselves on to Rachel, and to give us a bit of an update around mandatory training. Rachel, you better introduce yourself properly and say what on earth you do.
Thank you. Afternoon, everybody. My name is Rachel McCubbin. I'm the People Development Operational Lead. So that means that I see all the operational goings off within the People Development Department, one of which is mandatory training. So I'm just really here to offer a bit of an update around mandatory training for our clinical colleagues, ultimately at the Trust. The Trust is aligned to some national mandatory and statutory training frequencies guidance, which puts us in line with the core skills training framework. Now, what this means for our clinical colleagues is historically we used to do all of our mandatory training in a mandatory training workbook on the Sherwood Academy, and that was done annually. Now, if we align to the national frequencies, what this means is that there'll be a reduced workbook for 2 years due to the frequencies for some topics being annually and some topics being on a 3-yearly basis. So the changes for our clinical colleagues means that they're not going to be doing all of their mandatory training every year. Those that could be completed every 3 years will be done in a 3-yearly workbook. What this also means is face-to-face mandatory update for our clinical colleagues is remaining the same. The topics will still be delivered face-to-face, but there will be some changes to how we access our e-learning workbooks. So there's going to be a new 3-year training cycle, of which in year 1 colleagues will do an annual workbook, year 2 colleagues will do an annual workbook, and year 3 colleagues will then complete a 3-yearly workbook which has got all the topics in that we have to complete. So what we're asking really is that colleagues access this through the Sherwoodie Academy as they would normally do. The only difference is there's going to be 2 workbooks to choose from, and what we've done to make sure that clinical capacity isn't impacted is we have staggered the access to this. So what this means is there's going to be clinical colleagues split into 3 groups. This will be done alphabetically by surname. So group 1 will be colleagues who have a surname that start with the letters between A and F. Group 2 will include colleagues whose surname starts between G and N. And group 3 will be colleagues whose surname starts between the letters 0 and Z. Group 1 will start year 1 of the training cycle accessing workbook 1. Group 2 will access year 2 of the training cycle accessing workbook 1, and group 3 will start 3-year of the training cycle and access workbook 2. All of this information, as I understand it, is quite a fair change for our clinical colleagues, is on the People Development intranet page under mandatory training. We're going to put some links in the chat as to where you can access this. So ultimately there'll be 2 mandatory training workbooks for colleagues to choose from. OLM will still be sending you out those reminders, and there's information on which workbook you should be completing dependent on your surname. I hope I've made that as clear as I possibly can, understanding
Wow.
there's a lot of information there. Any
That's a bit
questions,
of
Dave?
yeah, that's a bit of a change, isn't it? So I did my BLS update yesterday.
Yes.
So the basic life support. So that's staying the same because that's face to face, if I get that right.
That's correct.
Okay. And then because my surnames is whatever it is, S, I'm in group 3, and I'll be able to access workbook 2. Have I got that right?
That's right. However, Dave, because you're in the medical colleagues, it remains the same for medics. So in the chat, hopefully there's a couple of links going in. There's one for our clinical colleagues. There's one for a learning space for our medical mandatory. And there's also one link to the e-learning space for our admin mandatory. Now for admin colleagues, this stays the same as it has done for all years. The changes are really for our clinical colleagues. But what it actually does is it reduces the time that we're away from clinical areas. So the training time required for years 1 and 2 of that 3-year training cycle is significantly reduced. So it does mean that our clinical colleagues get to stay in those clinical environments a bit longer.
Okay, so the rationale is it's streamlining and improving our mandatory training, and I think if I've got this right, there's a bit of a transition period that we've got to go through to get us all into the right program of work, which is going to be a little bit confusing for us, but hopefully in the bulletin when that comes out on Thursday, we'll have all that nicely laid out.
Yeah, and as I mentioned previously, it's all on the intranet pages as well.
Fantastic. Okay, so there might be 1 or 2 questions about that. I'm just seeing if anyone's got any questions. We put the workbooks up there, and we've put the link to the development page, but I can't see any questions as yet. There will be some, I think, Rachel. I'll give
Dave,
people a bit of a chance.
I think I may be able to preempt one and answer it now, if that's okay. And
Yeah,
that's
go on.
around mandatory training dates. So when somebody becomes non-compliant within their mandatory training period, those dates will not change. So it won't all start from the 1st of April, where people have to complete those. It's when you become out of date with your mandatory training, that is when the 2 workbooks will be available. So there will be no changes to people's dates.
Okay, lovely. And just those lovely emails that we get when we get multiple emails saying you're about to go out 20 months in advance and then 19 months and then 18. It isn't quite as bad as that, but it's 3 months in advance and then 2 months. Are those still happening then?
They will continue, just to prompt individuals that they need to complete
Okay.
the mandatory training.
Okay, I've got over my angst with all of that. Okay, lovely. Perfect. All right, I can't see any questions that have popped in, but I suspect people will have some questions, so we'll see what they come back to. Okay, I'm going to just hand over now to Rich to give us a bit of an update about all things to do with finance, a bit about the end of this year, and then into next year, I think, Rich.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. So good afternoon, everybody. For those who don't know me, I'm Richard Mills. I'm the Chief Financial Officer. So as Dave said, I just wanted to give a bit of an update on year end, a bit of an update on some of the financial outlook for 25-26, and happily take any questions that colleagues may have. So just bear with me 1 second while I'll pop a little slide up to share. Okay, so hopefully that's sharing. So you might have heard quite a bit in the news recently in the last couple of weeks about some of the changes that are happening nationally in the NHS. So, for example, there's been lots of conversation in the news about the abolishment of NHS England, so NHS England being removed. You might also have heard about a 50% reduction required in ICBs. So just a reminder, NHS England are effectively like the regulatory body for the NHS. So a lot of the things that we do as a provider, we report back through NHS England's regional teams and national teams, and then they work hand in hand with the Department of Health and Social Care to feed this back through government. ICBs, they're integrated care boards, so they're more local. So in Nottingham and Nottinghamshire, we have an integrated care board, and that's part of our system. And over recent years, the integrated care board have been responsible for both performance management of providers and for commissioning services from us as a provider. So those responsibilities are likely to be changing, and as a result of that, there'll be a bit of an expectation around the size of those organisations as well. This is all happening as the NHS faces up to the huge financial challenge that we're seeing in public services across the country, really. And you'll no doubt have heard about some of those budget deficits that the government have talked about and the Chancellor have talked about over recent months. So I think these will probably be some of the biggest changes nationally that the NHS has seen in a number of years, actually, probably since about 2012. But the real aim of it all is to try and manage the resources that the NHS is living within, to ask the NHS to live within its means, to get a hold of some of the rising costs that we're seeing across the health service, but also to try and reduce duplication and really trying to focus things on patient care, and the really important things that matter to our patients. So I think everybody's probably aware of the financial messaging that's been going out over the past year. The financial year 24-25, which finished yesterday, was a really challenging one for Sherwood and the NHS as a whole. As we look to change that kind of culture of living within our means, we've had to really focus on some of the solutions to financial problems and some other solutions we've had to try and manage our financial risks or our service risks, actually, without being able to throw any extra money at it. So it's been difficult, but I think together and across our teams. We've really taken a kind of a can-do attitude towards trying to face up to some of those problems that we've had and some of those difficulties that we've had. So I've seen much more collaboration across teams, across departments, across corporate services, clinical services, about where we might be able to reduce waste. We've seen some positive movement in terms of some of our non-essential spend around non-pay, for example, and really challenging ourselves about why we're spending money and what we're spending money on, and whether we could spend it in a different way or a better way. We've seen some much more positive movements in terms of the use of temporary staffing, which tends to be a higher cost for us. So we've seen reductions in the amount we're spending on agency and bank usage over the past year, which is all stuff that's moving in the right kind of directions. Just noting some of that national context that I talked about before, the challenge in 25-26 will be at least as difficult as what it's been over the past financial year. So we know that we'll be asked to live within our means. We know that what we've got at the moment doesn't cover everything that we'd want to be able to do. We'd love to have much bigger budgets. We'd love to spend a lot more money, but unfortunately, we need to live within what we've got. So as a result of that, we are going to have to maintain a lot of the processes, a lot of the control processes that we've had in place over the past few months and the past year. So that includes, our management and our scrutiny around vacancies. So the vacancy control process will remain. We'll continue to need to look at all vacancies to understand whether there are alternative options for managing those gaps, and to make sure that we've got a justification for where we are recruiting. We'll need to keep up that focus on non-essential, non-pay spend. There are discretionary forms in place. There are break glass opportunities in place to get discretionary spend authorised, but it does need to be exceptional circumstances. We also need to make sure that we're not authorising or we're not committing to spend anything without going through the proper processes. So we can't commit spend or order goods without having a purchase order in place. And that purchase order needs to be backed up by a contract that's been approved through the relevant approval mechanisms, or a service level agreement if it's buying in services. So divisional management teams will all be aware of these processes. So if you're in any doubt, then please do reach out to your line managers and the finance team, who can help to clarify exactly what you need to do before you commit any spend. And I suppose ultimately what we're looking for is that real strong budget ownership and management across our teams, that we continue to support each other, we continue to be working efficiently and collaboratively to really protect that patient care and those frontline services, and make sure we're using our resources in the right places. Final slide from me is just about what we can do. So as I've just said, let's work together, let's look for smarter or new ways of working. If there are things that you're seeing that you think is a bit of a frustrating process, or you're seeing a lot of duplication or potentially waste in a process, then please do share those ideas. We have our improvement faculty, we have finance teams looking at ways we can do things differently. So we'll be able to have a conversation with you, we'll be able to have get you some support, to understand if there's a better way of doing it or a more efficient way of doing it. And please remember that everybody in this organisation has a part to play in managing our finances. It's really important that we do that. So please do continue to take actions that do protect our finances and make sure that we're using it in the right way. So I'll pause there, Dave, and happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Rich.
Any questions apart from yours, Dave, maybe?
Yeah, well, I'll get to my questions in a bit, but just the first thing I was going to say was just going to be a massive thank you, not just to all colleagues in the finance team for the work that they've done, but also just to colleagues across the organisation. The financial improvement programme, the FIP programme, has delivered an outstanding £38.5 million. I mean, when we were at this stage last year, we thought that would never be possible, and that has been truly outstanding. And I just recognise the hard work that's gone on with that from all sorts of people. The slightly disappointing concept is I suspect we've got to do that all again for next year. Is that right, Rich?
Effectively, yeah. But thanks for bringing in that. Thanks, actually, because that was a bit of a slip from me there. That I didn't mean to say that myself. And the really important thing in that from people who've been along to one of the budget holder sessions over recent months, or have heard me talk on a previous team brief, is over the last year we've had real difficulty in accessing cash, which has given us issues in terms of managing suppliers and making sure that we're getting all of the clinical supplies and consumables that we need to treat our patients. But because of all that real hard work and that demonstration that we are delivering efficiencies, we have been able to access cash in the last month, which has really helped with that and made sure that we're able to pay our suppliers off on time, which is great. But yeah, that challenge on efficiency remains. A lot of the stuff that we managed to find last year is what we call non-recurrent, so it's effectively a one-off that we won't necessarily be able to repeat. So that all adds into the burden, I suppose, for 25-26, and our efficiency target in the plans that we submitted last week is a rather eye-watering £45.8 million.
Wow. And what I would also say, just because of me really, that what we without doubt will strive to do is maintain the quality of care for our patients and the safety of our patients. So this is about doing things differently. This isn't about cutting wholesale care, if you like. Is that fair, Rich?
Absolutely, yeah. It's really important that we protect those core services, as I've said earlier. And in our planning that we submit every year, we submit a financial plan, we submit workforce plans, but importantly, we submit plans about the level of activity that we'll deliver and also the performance standards that we'll aim to deliver. And Sherwood absolutely has plans to improve in terms of both planned and emergency care, in terms of waiting times, access for patients, all of those things that are really important for our local communities.
Okay, so I've got a couple of questions coming in. One of them is, I don't know if you can see it, it says, is the Trust likely to see an ask to reduce ANC roles, stroke staffing like the ICBs?
Yeah, thank you. So that's a fair question and something that I'm sure is of concern to a lot of colleagues. So there hasn't been a specific target set to provider organisations like Sherwood, in terms of numbers or in terms of like a 50% cut or anything like that. What providers are being asked to do, I suppose there are three really quite strong targets around providers, around workforce. They are, as I said earlier, to continue to reduce agency spend, to continue to reduce bank spend, but there is also an ask that we look at any growth that we've had in what's called our infrastructure costs over the past 3 years, and look to manage that growth and look to return that to levels more like what they were 3 years ago. So there aren't specific targets, but we do need to make sure that we're looking at that overall infrastructure function, making sure that's the right size. Again, making sure that we've got duplication or waste, that we've got the right kind of digital solutions, processes to make colleagues' lives as easy as they possibly can be. I talked earlier about the vacancy control process, so that remains in place, and non-clinical roles will continue to go through that vacancy control process.
Okay, so this is all about spending money wisely, isn't it? That's the key message. Okay, I've got another question in there. I've heard other trusts in the region have a target number of posts to lose from non-clinical areas. What is the situation at Sherwood? I mean, that's a similar sort of question, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's a similar answer, really. So you know, in our overall workforce plan, we submit plans for our total size of our workforce. We are expecting a very small reduction in the overall size of our workforce, but that is from kind of natural vacancies and things that we know will happen from where we are today. So at the moment, we haven't got any specific target around around non-clinical areas. But importantly, as I said, we do need to make sure that we really understand all of those infrastructure costs, really understand everything we're doing, why we're doing it, how we might be able to do it more effectively, and what that means, so that we can make sure we're directing as much resource as we can do to our clinical areas.
Okay, and Rich, just one from me then. If I can go all the way back to where you started on these changes to NHS England, these changes to ICBs, what are people on this call, what are people on the ground going to see or feel is different? Because a lot of this is reversing the changes that were brought in following Andrew Lansley's change to the NHS. But what are people actually going to feel? How's it going to feel differently?
That's a really good question, Dave. So I don't think we know yet. I don't think we know enough about exactly what is going to change, whether there will be functions that will be dropped. I think what the changes are aiming at doing is reducing a lot of the duplication kind of between providers and government, so that decision-making processes can be streamlined. At the moment, there's quite a lot of different people that we send reports to. We report into our local system, we report into regional teams, we report into national teams. So hopefully what it'll do will streamline some of that reporting. I think there'll be a reduced number of targets that we'll look to manage, or that we're managed against. So I think so hopefully we'll see that, and hopefully it will just provide a little bit more clarity and a bit more simplicity, I suppose, to manage the business that we need to manage. So answer that question, Dave.
Yeah, I'm being a bit provocative. I think we just don't know. I think there's lots of unanswered questions. For me, there's questions about how we're going to be regulated if a lot of this regulation is going, but actually some of that is, I hope it's going to sort of empower us to take things into our own hands. We want to provide good care. Why wouldn't we? Therefore, we can sort of do quite a lot of that regulation without someone sitting on our shoulder. But that's a brave new world. But I quite fancy that. Then there's the bit about commissioning. So if the purse strings are tightening to the extent which you're describing, it's actually, can we afford to provide the healthcare that we've been providing for everyone? And I think that's going to be a real challenge to these integrated care boards, and how they're going to do that, and what are they going to look at reducing the funding for. So I think there's lots of uncertainties that I think we're going to see panning out. I don't know if you'd agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is a new operating framework that's being consulted on in the coming quarter, which hopefully will start to provide a little bit more clarity around exactly how all of that will work.
Okay, I've got a couple more questions that are just coming in, Rich. They're interesting ones. There's one, will we be looking at offering redundancy packages? I think there's been some talk in that nationally, hasn't there, around the NHS England roles? Yeah,
there has been talk nationally. Again, at the moment, it's a little bit unclear. Speaking as someone who has family working at NHS England, I think it's still a little bit unclear for people working at NHS England as well. So there has been talk from the government about supporting redundancy in the NHS. It's unclear whether that's at an NHS England level, an ICB level, or whether it's NHS wide. But at the moment, for any providers to consider redundancy, we would have to go through a national approvals process. So at the moment, we don't have any immediate plans around that.
Okay, that's helpful. And then there's one around reassuring colleagues that need equipment linked to reasonable adjustments in order to do their job well and safely will still be supported. I think the answer to that is yes.
Sorry, don't come off mute there. Yeah, absolutely. So if anyone's having a workplace assessment or occupational health assessments, and there are reasonable adjustments that we need to make to make your job and your working environment safe, then absolutely they'd be supported, and we'd get them through the discretionary spend process. But yeah,
okay, perfect. All right. I'm just looking for any other questions. Can't believe Rachel's got off so easy with mandatory training. It's but obviously money's talking just at the moment. Rachel, you're very, very lucky. So I'm going to just see if we've got any more questions. I can't see any more questions. Okay. I'm going to have to fess up. Okay. So I did do a little joke. It was an April Fool's joke. I know it was a bit childish, but I did say, does anyone want a stand-up chair? And we've had one person ask for one. So I don't know whether I'd count that as being successful or not successful, but I apologize if I teased you all, but that was my attempt at humor. So I'm going to just start to draw this to a close. Rachel, any more reflections that you want to give on the mandatory training? Just give us a brief update of where all that information is, because there's a huge amount of information.
Yeah, of course. I will be talking on Sisters and Matrons meetings, so there's opportunity to ask any questions there. But all of the information is on the People Development intranet page under the tab Mandatory Training, and it'll all be there for you to access and have a read of. Anybody that's unclear as to which workbook they'll be doing, the information is on there, again, allocated by surname. So those A to F will be doing work in Group 1. Group 2 will be those between G and N, and Group 3 will be those who've got a surname between O and Z, and all of that information is on there to access.
Brilliant, thank you. And Rich, any final reflections on the tricky financial year we're going into?
Only just to say there'll be a further kind of cascade out to budget holders and line managers, hopefully by the end of this week, just to clarify some of those controls and those processes that I mentioned earlier that we'll need to continue. And we'll also set up a bit of a Q&A session. It'll be in the last week of April, because I've got a couple of weeks annual leave in April. But in the last week of April, we'll have a Q&A session for budget holders and line managers, so that if you've got any kind of queries, concerns, comments, or questions around it, then you can have an opportunity to ask me directly about that.
I hope you haven't carried over any annual leave. I'm sure
Absolutely
I didn't
not.
sign that off. And I think just going back to that tough financial environment, I think what I would just say to everyone is that we can get through this together. And that's, if you like, the power of us all working together. Lots of things will become much clearer over the next few weeks and into months, I think, about what these changes mean. But I have no doubt we are able to get through this. And then the only other final thing I would say about that is that it's people on this call, it's people working, at the front line, who have the ideas of how we can make savings, how we can make changes. Because actually, a lot of this is about doing things differently and doing things better. And we'd really value and welcome people's ideas on that. And I think there's a link in the chat about that. Okay, I'm going to draw this to a close. I'm going to say thank you so much for your presentations, Rachel and Rich. And I'm going to say I apologize once again for my April Fool joke. It's going to really be flat when people watch this on catch up, assuming anyone does. But I wish you a good rest of the afternoon and week. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.